age is a new epigenetic biological age interpretation, which really proves out the idea that we're all aging differently on the organ level.
All right, there we go. That's gonna make me pass out. That'll do it there. That's bleeding good there.
When we first started the company, I think we had one goal, which was to offer biological age testing to healthcare providers, as aging is the number one risk factor for all-cause mortality and morbidities.
What people don't recognize is that there are methods in quantifying every step of the way, going all the way from the molecular to the physical.
This is the most entertaining the Middle Tech podcast has ever been, and Evan's going to pass out.
Welcome back to the Middle Tech podcast. You got Logan Jones and Evan Knowles here recording out of the Hunsicker Venture Studio. Today, we sat down with Hannah Wint and Varun Dwaraka of TruDiagnostic. Hannah is a co-founder and director of operations. Varun is the head of bioinformatics. And this is their second time, or rather Varun's second time coming on the podcast to talk about TruDiagnostic. So if you need a refresher, TruDiagnostic specializes in analyzing and helping understand biological age and the pace of aging. So Evan and I actually both got to take a test last time they came on, so we get to talk about the results of those tests in this episode, as well as a lot of other awesome information around longevity and the science of aging. So Evan, what did you think about this episode?
Yeah, I mean, it's a super interesting topic, biometrics, and I think, the idea of tracking how healthy you are and your biological age is super interesting. I think preventative medicine is something that's being talked about more and more. And so we dove into what that means, exactly how TruDiagnostic views that, and kind of the testing and models they're creating to help consumers understand that data. Then we dove into just some company details. They're based here in Lexington, which is really awesome to see. So they're a growing company very quickly. And so it was cool to kind of hear the story and the journey of how they got to where they are today. And then we dove into kind of the effects that we're seeing out in the community due to research that they've put out and their customers. There's several very big influencers that we talk about on this episode and how they're leveraging it. So it was cool to hear, those stories. And then we, brought it all back to, where they view this space going in the future. So that was really cool to hear as well.
Yeah, super exciting space to be following. I mean, aging affects everyone. So I think everyone can get something from this episode. Before we dive in though, please don't forget to subscribe, follow us on social media. We'd really appreciate that, and it helps you stay up to date with what's going on at Middle Tech. Before we dive into this episode, we just want to get a quick word from our sponsors. Before highlighting our sponsors, we'd just like to state that the views and content shared on this platform do not necessarily reflect those of our show sponsors. Middle Tech is presented by KY Innovation, the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development's Office of Entrepreneurship. KY Innovation exists to support and develop Kentucky's startup ecosystem, and we are proud to be supported by an organization whose mission aligns so closely with ours. If you're a founder building in Kentucky, you need to check out the resources that KY Innovation has to offer. You can find more information by clicking the link in our show notes or going to kyinnovation.com. Middle Tech is sponsored by Bolt Marketing. Take your website to the next level with a website that's built to work. At Bolt Marketing, they're revolutionizing websites for small businesses that are affordable, customizable, and hassle-free. Whether you have a construction company, a boutique clothing store, or you own a hot yoga studio, they have options for you. Click the link in our show notes to explore their marketing options that can transform your marketing and grow your business. And as a personal note, Bolt Marketing built our website, and they were awesome to work with throughout the entire process. We highly recommend working with them. Middle Tech is also supported by Hunsicker, an impact venture studio based in Lexington, Kentucky. Hunsicker is creating companies out of the ordinary by founding and funding the next generation of purpose-driven startups. They partner with founders to create indispensable solutions to the world's most fundamental problems. On a quarterly basis, they host an invite-only intimate gathering called Fireside Convos, where attendees representing a wide network of stakeholders in the regional entrepreneurial ecosystem discuss timely topics, including the role of AI for startups out of Kentucky and the challenges of identifying and attracting talent. To be considered as a guest, visit hunsicker.co/fireside to apply. All right, welcome back to the Middle Tech podcast. You got Logan Jones and Evan Knowles here recording out of the Hunsicker Venture Studio. Today we are joined by Hannah Wint and Varun Dwaraka of TruDiagnostic. So this is TruDiagnostic's second episode with us. We got to sit down with Varun for the first one. We're happy to be joined by Hannah for the second one. So just to go over their titles real quick before we dive in here, Hannah is the co-founder and director of operations, and Varun is the head of bioinformatics. So we're excited to have you guys here, excited to dive into TruDiagnostic, but wanted to just start off by kind of giving some background on you guys, both involved in cool things outside of TruDiagnostic. Hannah, you have your own podcast, so we were kind of consoling each other about the difficulties of running a podcast, but tell us a little bit about everything epigenetics.
Yeah, so everything epigenetics, I think I started it 2 years ago now, but it's just a way to really keep myself honest on all of the research that's happening in the epigenetic field. So usually I work with our healthcare provider partners, and I'm not as involved in the research like Varun is, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. So I use it as a way to interview PhDs, guests, post-grad students who really just want to share their research and what it means to the epigenetic field.
I love that. It's also great brand building, I'm sure, for you in the space of epigenetics. And Varun, I just saw this on your LinkedIn as I was kind of researching, for the notes, but you're now on faculty at a longevity college, I guess. So tell us a little bit about that. It's in Switzerland. I probably just butchered the name of it, but.
Oh, no worries. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
The Geneva College of Longevity Sciences. That's the full name. Yeah. It was honestly kind of a weird, connection initially. Dr. Dominic Thor, the president, reached out on LinkedIn and was like, hey, we're trying to create the first ever College of Longevity Sciences. And we want you on faculty. I think that a lot of a lot of this happened because of TruDiagnostic, where we were able to do a lot of research. And I think that they were able to read some of that research, and it kind of led to, being able to serve as faculty. A lot of my role is just to be able to educate. That was one of the biggest things I loved about grad school, was being a TA and teaching. And so I get to live that out a little bit, on the side.
I love that. And also worth mentioning both UK grads as well, which
Absolutely.
we love. So I wanted to start off with a question, and I'll pose this to you first, Varun, and then Hannah, I'd love to hear your answer as well. But just in general, what draws you to longevity and epigenetics in the first place? You both are not only involved in this company, but like we mentioned, have kind of side things going on as well. So why'd you get involved in it?
I feel like it's more for me to understand myself, as much as that is a very selfish answer. I think in a lot of sciences, you are looking at biological aspects that are maybe not so, personal. And I feel like a lot of the things that we do here at TruDiagnostic, or even in the field of longevity, can be directly applied to yourself. And so what better way to, learn how to be more healthy, achieve a couple extra years, than just studying it. And I feel like longevity has been always that kind of draw. And epigenetics was a natural kind of extension of longevity, especially with how, I think we'll talk a little bit more about this, but how prevalent epigenetics is in the context of longevity.
Yeah, I think for me, probably just curiosity. I love diving into the unknown. And I think with epigenetics, it's such a new, novel biomarker. And now we're using it at TruDiagnostic as more of a discovery tool for all outcomes, all diseases, even outside of aging. And I think we'll talk about some of those predictors later on as well. But I really am just excited to wake up every day, open my laptop, receive my Google alerts on the new papers being published, and dive into the possibilities that epigenetics can uncover.
So this is our second episode with you all. If you all were to run into somebody at a networking event and they asked you what your business does, how would you describe what TruDiagnostics is doing?
Can we go first?
Absolutely.
I would say, and the answer has definitely changed over time and probably will continue to change, but short, sweet definition, I would say TruDiagnostic is a leading health data company that specializes in in measuring, interpreting, and understanding the findings in the fluid epigenome. So how can, again, that apply to our entire health, even outside of aging as well? So it's really useful that, we have the lab in-house just located down the street. So we're really doing everything from start to finish in the process.
When the company was founded, and then kind of a bit about the journey to where you are today, maybe how big the company is, and some other factors that you can give the audience an idea of, where you guys are located and how, what stage of business you're in.
Yeah, definitely. So when we first started the company, I think we had one goal, which was to offer biological age testing to healthcare providers. As aging's the number one risk factor for all-cause mortality and morbidity. So how can we quantify that number one risk factor? Now I think we just want to take these markers and make them as applicable as possible to everyone in all disease states outside of even aging itself.
If I can add to that, actually, I have to say, I mean, you know, Brian Smith and Hannah Wendt and Jeremy Dell kind of really started the company. And I think with the aging aspect, the craziest thing was the number of scientific advancements and the unearthing of the relationships between epigenetics beyond just aging. And I feel like the company has done a very good job staying on top of the scientific assets and the scientific literature, which is what's really causing us to kind of shift into something beyond just biological aging. And so this includes, you know, being able to utilize DNA methylation as a surrogate to look at different clinical measures, proteins, metabolites, clinical values, all of that. And so I think that it's really showing that epigenetics is just permeates through all sorts of clinical aspects.
Yeah, and I'm excited to really dive into the conversation around longevity. And there's almost like a whole industry that's kind of emerging around. Some people are calling it like reversing your age or like reversing aging. I don't necessarily buy into that, but I definitely love the idea of adding on more healthy years to the end of your kind of your life. And Varun, last time you came on, you're kind enough to send Evan and I some testing kits. You know, after you had come on and kind of explained what you guys were doing, and we'll have Jake insert the clip of Evan and I actually taking the test because we did it live. We pricked our fingers live. So, do you want to kick us off with a little unboxing action here and then prick our fingers? Yeah. All right. First, we're going to need to get the gauze pad out, get the alcohol pad out. We're going to be actually pricking our fingers here. So if that makes you queasy in any way, you might want to skip this part.
Does it say which finger?
So it says the side. It can be any finger. But it said do the side of it because there's less nerve endings there. You ever had your blood taken, like actually taken?
Yeah, and I almost passed out. I had to get some apple juice.
We are really putting on a brave face for the Middle Tech listeners here by pricking our fingers and acting like we're not. No, we're scared of it.
Or these little things prick it?
Yeah. So we got the little pricker things there. So we got this little card. You can see there, that little circle. We're going to drop our blood onto that little circle, which we should probably not like actually show the blood dropping. You want to go first? Do it at the same time?
I don't even know. How does this work?
You just push it down and it triggers a spring, and then it
I don't like that.
it jabs your finger.
I'm actually pretty scared.
Did you not know what we were doing here?
I don't know.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Just 1, 2, 3. You ready?
All right.
We'll do it together. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that wasn't that bad. Before dripping it on there, I guess we're gonna have to like squeeze it. It says don't touch the card either.
What card?
Like the card, the little circle where you put your blood. How's your blood flow looking?
I don't know. I might get sick.
Are you serious?
I don't know. I don't know if I like it. I don't think I like it.
This is the most entertaining the Middle Tech podcast has ever been, and Evan's going to pass out.
Yeah, your drops are really tiny.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to be able to do it. You got to do it.
Yeah,
do it for the listeners, dude.
Hold on.
I mean, that is like, good Lord. It's just not bleeding enough. You have a knife on you? You just got to kind of like massage your finger. You did yours way over on the side. Do the second one right on the tip. Oh, that's a good drop right there. Look at that drop.
I don't want to look. Mine stopped bleeding, so I'm going to have to
prick it again. Wow. Dude, you're actually going to do it?
You're pretty brave. You're pretty brave.
You got it, bro.
All right, there we go. That's gonna make me pass out. That'll do it there. That's bleeding good there. All right, I need some apple juice. I'm like shaking.
Dude,
it's going all over the place. I really don't. This is just game over here. Look at this. This is unacceptable.
Oh my God.
God dang. Oh shoot.
Oh no.
Yeah, this is a lot here.
You got some blood to spare for me? Mine's not going enough. Come on, little buddy. Oh,
yeah,
this is.
I don't know about this one. Let's go get some paper towels.
I think I might have to do the same thing though, because mine's just not. Whose idea was this? And did the whole thing and got the results back. So now we actually have our test, which I wanted to just kind of discuss some of the results on there and kind of how you guys are doing that. It's a very information dense report. I remember when we first did it, Hannah, we got on the phone together and you were walking me through everything. And I was like, good Lord, like I feel good about this because it seems like I'm relatively healthy, but I don't know half of what I'm hearing right now. But anyway, I wanted to pull up the report and just kind of talk through some of the stuff that's on here. Kind of the main thing that we had mentioned was Symphony Age. So before I start kind of talking about what some of my results were and what some of Evan's results were, can you just give us a high level on what Symphony Age means?
Yeah, so Symphony Age is a new epigenetic biological age interpretation, which really proves out the idea that we're all aging differently on the organ level. So it's why all four of us, or everyone in the world, doesn't get liver disease at the same time, right? We're different according to our behaviors and our environment and how we interact with just that. So we're really able to look at biomarkers on the individual level and predict aging of 11 different systems. So there's like heart, liver, lung, musculoskeletal, brain, blood, hormone. There's a couple other I'm missing, but Logan, you can see them on the report.
You've got them all there. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, I was looking through these. I think the one I'm most proud of. So I'll give some of my stats here, even though this may be slightly embarrassing. So I was 27 when I took the test. My overall Symphony Age was 31, which I had kind of predicted. I was a little overly confident. I said my biological age should be younger than my chronological, which it's okay. I won't be too offended. I think I don't know. You tell me if this is a good thing. My brain age is 37. Does that mean I just have like a more mature brain? Is that what we're going to say?
Go ahead.
It's essentially saying that your biomarkers are associated with a older individual that has physiologically an older brain. So whether that equates to wisdom, I'm not sure, but I'm going to say, yeah, take it as you got more wisdom, but physiologically it means you have a brain that is older.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'll give some kudos to Evan on his report too. He has the lungs of a 20-year-old, which I was kind of jealous of when reading the report. But talk to us about how that's actually calculating some of those ages of these different systems. Like what is going into that calculation? I'm sure Varun, you're deep into this as the head of kind of bioinformatics at TruDiagnostic.
Sure. I mean, I do have to give a shout out to the group at Yale University that developed this. But one of the reasons why we were super excited about this is that when we're calculating this, we're not actually getting like tissue samples or biopsies of those individual organs. We're actually just getting it from your blood. A lot of questions that we get are like, how are you estimating this just from your blood? If you can consider it, your blood is the highway for your body. A lot of those signals that you're capturing within different types of organs are actually permeating through your blood system. And so technically you could get those kind of outputs essentially. So with that said, with that in mind, the way that this was trained was they're using machine learning essentially. For the people that are maybe want to know a little bit more, it's penalized regression modeling with the inclusion of principal components, a statistical method. That's all the math I'm going to spit out. But essentially using that kind of methodology, what they're identifying are which of these CPG biomarkers, these CPG sites, the methylation sites, are highly predictive of age and then also of that specific organ. So with like any other machine learning model, the way that they are able to dichotomize the data or essentially label the data, you can then build models for, let's say, using blood samples, but say this is the age of a brain that is 46. This is a age of a brain of a lung that's 45, and then using that kind of methodology, be able to reverse or essentially engineer a model and then reverse calculate that value from the blood itself.
And then what about ways to affect the results? So you got diet, you've got fitness. So like, what are some ways that those that you're testing can influence them?
I can maybe share a little bit on the literature side, but I do want to hear what Hannah has to say because she front faces with a lot of the clinicians. From the research side, one of the things that we've been noticing, especially because this algorithm or this model is very new, it came out in 2023, is that we actually see that diet can actually, I'm not going to say reverse, lessen or reduce that age value across even 8 weeks. We've seen it with different other types of treatments as well. The reason I'm not going a little bit deeper is because since it's so new, this is actually one aspect of what we have to do is, figure out what are the actual interventions. And to this, I will say that the creators of Systems Age are actually doing an interventional trial where they're looking at, metformin use, they're looking at follistatin, all of these different types of essentially drugs and seeing how they improve upon Systems Age. So it is coming out. But right now, there was a paper from our group that was published, or that will be published this Friday, which suggests that diet can actually have great reductions in this Systems Age. But I do want to know, what have you heard?
Yeah. No, I love that question. My answer is always the same, is that it's super, super personalized. So we can dive into all of the interventional trials, and that's great. I think it does give you options from a populational standpoint, or maybe guidelines you can start to follow. And I do think those interventional trials are so important. It shows you how these biological age markers really move and work. But this testing is newer than the first iPhone that came out, right? So it's super new, about 10 years old, about 12, I guess, since the first actual iteration of these markers came out. So I think what we really stress, and when I work with healthcare providers on a day-to-day basis, is hey, do N of 1 precision-based medicine on your patients, take a baseline, implement some type of plan, which we can now give you more targeted resolution with the Systems Age, whether it be through lifestyle, supplements, medications, procedural-based therapies, anything from simple diet change, eating more leafy greens, to young blood infusions, which we can again discuss later. So there's really a whole spectrum, but I think as long as you get a baseline, you're journaling or writing down what you're doing, and then you test 6 to 12 months later, I think that's the best way to see an effect.
How do you think about your customer? So through the journey of the business, how has who you're selling this to changed? How do you reach them? What is their profile? Is this a luxury item? Tell us a bit about who your customer is and how they're thinking of your product.
Yeah. And I didn't answer your first question, Evan, too. How many people are at TruDiagnostic? Where are we located? So we probably had a team of 20 for a long time, most of them working actually physically in the lab, running the samples. Now we're probably at 60, I don't know, 70, somewhere in there. So we have a lot of outside support. But we really serve a lot of people, which I think is what confuses a lot of people too. So I work with healthcare providers. We sell it as a flagship product for the testing, you all did. Most of these are going to be providers treating aging as a disease in the hot spots of Miami, Florida, New York City, LA, and it's all cash pay clinics. So that's really important too. It's not reimbursed by insurance. So definitely is for people right now who have a little bit of extra cash in their pockets, I would say. Pretty optimized group too, which you have to take into consideration when you're comparing yourself to the percentiles on the report.
That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, when you think of kind of this budding new space of longevity and kind of biohacking, optimizing your health, all of this sort of stuff, it kind of follows the same trend line that you see other technologies taking of you kind of cater to those who have more money, more disposable income to spend on those things. And then you try to come down that cost curve to make it more accessible to more people. But Hannah, you and I got to attend the Hunsicker Fireside Convo where we, discussed longevity. And I think the topic of the discussion was the morality of immortality and viewing aging as a disease. It was a really interesting discussion, but really where that conversation kind of centered was reactive medicine versus proactive medicine. So I view kind of what TruDiagnostic is doing through the tests that you guys offer and all the data that you can give somebody is you can be more proactive about addressing some of the concerns you might be seeing with some of the biomarkers that are on there. I'm just curious, your experience, in the epigenetic space, does this seem like something that would get implemented into our existing healthcare system and helping our existing healthcare system be more proactive? Or is this something that you would see becoming its own thing of more proactive medicine? The current healthcare system kind of stays reactive. It kind of makes sense as it is now. Where do you see things going into the future?
Yeah, I think the hope is that it's proactive, right? And included in clinics moving forward. I think what we're getting into outside of the aging is more of the preventative screening or kind of risk scores. So, you may have heard of even the Gallery test by Grail. It's a stage 0 cancer test where you can just go and give your blood and they can detect super, super early signs of cancer floating in your body, which is like crazy. That's unheard of. They do, Clearly scans, which looks at really, really early stages of heart outcomes, heart failure. So I think we're moving toward that direction. I think cost is a really large barrier for a lot of people. I think before the end of the year, we'll probably have some pretty large price drops just because of the technology being better and better from our Illumina, who we get a lot of our like consumables from. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's absolutely fair, and I think for the context of I wish I was a fly on the wall, by the way, for that conversation, because it is
a fun one.
Yeah, especially because working with a lot of the MDs, it is very much a serious issue. I just want to echo what Hannah was mentioning, because I think that right now, or for a long time, I think the field of epigenetic testing, for however long it was there, was using age as a surrogate to look at disease risk. Now, I guess the question that we've been always asking is, why do you want to keep the middleman? Like, even biological age in and of itself, you're not really caring about your biological age. What you're caring is about that value in relation to how much risk you're going to get. And so what we've been doing, and I think that a lot of the field, even from the research side, and I think also from like the commercial side, is instead of using that midway point, why not just train it to the incidence of that disease risk? And I think that that's where like we've been kind of moving towards, and I think that starts to go more towards the preventative. One of the questions I think you were asking was, will this replace, or will this be a completely different area? I think that once we hit those methylation risk scores, what we're calling it, I think that could be in and of itself its own test.
So you guys are probably collecting a lot of first-party data from your own users and customers, but are you able to augment that with publicly available data or proprietary data you're developing within partnerships? How do you think about your sources of data?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So data privacy is a huge thing for us, and obviously we're, it's a morality thing, right? Obviously, but also it's a huge thing because in order for our algorithms or our models to be very good, you have to make sure that the data is coming from a reputable source. So, truth be told, the TruDiagnostic cohort, whatever data set that we have, is more of a test data set. We don't actually train a whole lot of things on our data set. We could go out to biobanks. Specifically, the one that we used for some of our products was the Mass General Brigham's biobank through our collaborator at Harvard University, Dr. Jessica Lasky-Sue. And the reason why we went there and why we spent a lot of time getting IRB approval and maintaining all of that HIPAA compliance is because the way that they have generated and cleaned and preserved that data set is immaculate. And so for our models to be great, we need a great data set. And so that's where we kind of go towards. We have been looking into the UK Biobank, the Health and Retirement Study Biobank, some of the educational biobanks through University of Michigan, Framingham, all of that. So whenever we're developing these models and these kind of predictors, we tend to go towards biobanks and treat it like a research project. That's why we have an entire research wing.
It's hard though, isn't it, to like get the data? Like, isn't that a
pain
point for us?
It has been, and one of the things I've heard, which is I feel like I don't want to like ruffle any feathers, is that there's a stigma for-profit organizations to go to these publicly available, not publicly available, but these data sets that are freely available. A lot of times they just say like, wait, you guys can just create it yourself, like, or they're expecting some kind of like cash payment or something like that, which is understandable. It's a resource, but when it comes to these kind of some of these algorithms and models, we do give out to researchers, because in order for these models to work, we want people to use it. And so that has been kind of the pain point, is really kind of convincing. It's like, hey, look, we're not like stacked with billions of dollars as a small company, yet we really want to do cool stuff. And the data sets are how we try to do cool stuff, So that's been kind of the hard part.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to really anything where you're trying to train really accurate models, like as you know, data is king. Like you have to have accurate, clean data. One of the other topics I wanted to hit on here, and we've kind of talked about the accessibility part of this, but I want to bring up one of your all's more well-known customers, which is Brian Johnson. You've seen him on the media all over the place. Most people listening will recognize that name when you think of, he's kind of become the face of the longevity movement in a way. With his like "Don't Die" slogan, he's spending like $2 million annually and hundreds of these pills and supplements in this kind of crazy regimen. I guess to move on from the accessibility point, because my original question was, is it even realistic for somebody to get close to what he's doing? And I think the answer to that is probably it's not really. But I am curious, just when you see somebody that's taking it that far, what are some of your thoughts and feedback to somebody that's doing it on that kind of level? Because he really views himself as like a longevity athlete in a way. Like he's taking it to the max.
I mean, I do think the $2 million price tag is a lot. I don't have $2 million. And so, initially, if I look at it by face value, it's impossible for me to do that. But I do appreciate what he's doing, because also he's bringing awareness.
He's pioneering it.
He's pioneering it. And I can't really hate on those kind of pioneers, I think I always look back at 15 years ago when they said, we'll sequence genomes to do personalized medicine. Like people were giving that, like, what, you're going to spend like, millions of dollars just to sequence a genome. Now you could do it for $100, and it's been like the cornerstone of predictive medicine. So props to him.
Yeah, I like him. I really do, because I don't think many people would be willing to put everything they've done in their entire lifetime, whether it's like growth hormone, other medications, who knows, who cares, publicly on a website. So I think I like the pioneer part is like what draws me to him, because he's like kind of wild and crazy too. But I think what's impressive about his results is he keeps one of our markers, the pace of aging, which is more of like a speedometer of how you're currently aging. He keeps that consistent. And that's like really hard to do, or it's really impressive. So he's aging, like 0.7, let's call it, I don't know his exact score, biological years for every one chronological year. And he's retesting, every 3 to 6 months. So to keep that consistent, something he's doing is working. Do I think it's over the top and exaggerated? Absolutely. Like we need more realistic people. And I think that's why he created the Rejuvenation Olympics, which is where everyone can submit and consent to have their data and their age outputs on this kind of leaderboard. And like he really wants to curate a community. He wants to bring people together to the same like mission and cause of don't die. Obviously people can do it at like a lot cheaper cost than he is, but I don't know. I'm all about what he does. I think it's fun.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, when it's like a new field or new technology in a way like this, you're going to have some fanatics about it. And those are going to be the people that kind of push the space forward. Like there wasn't much being written about, at least that normal people were reading, until he kind of burst onto the scene doing all the ridiculous stuff that he's doing. But I'm sure that, when it's all said and done, there's going to be a lot of valuable insights that him and his team were able to discover through all of these crazy processes that he's doing. So I always like kind of following what he's doing. I follow him on X and, read most of the articles that get put out about him. It's just kind of a wild thing.
Yeah, I think he's opened doors to like better understanding, like, aspects of nutrition, for example. Like the Mediterraneans have been using the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet and all that for a long time, but people have not really adopted it. I mean, maybe this is coming back to like, bringing back the things that your grandma would say, and then also disproving some of the things your grandma would say too.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think.
Yeah, one more thing about that too, just because this might be interesting to your listeners. The amount of businesses that I've seen people create spun off of like his idea in terms of like new products or like meal plans or like the same iteration of what he's doing, but in another country is like insane.
It's like blueprint, right?
Yeah. There's someone named Chef Jeff on Twitter or X, and he's made like, I think like millions and just offering people that same like meal delivery type of service. So it's really cool, just like the entire movement Brian has started, even like outside of health.
Yeah. And going back to something I was saying earlier, I feel like some people can look at that and almost get kind of an eerie feeling of like, oh, he's trying to stop aging or reverse aging, which is kind of unrealistic. But to me, and I think to most people, the more attractive part that you should take away from that is adding more healthy years onto the latter half of your life. Because I think that's what everyone truly wants is when you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, still be mobile and sharp and all of that sort of stuff. And that's what I feel like is the most important part of this. I don't think anybody really wants to never die. Like you may think you do, but I don't. That's a whole morality question that we could go down a rabbit hole on.
Yeah. Keep that brain age below 20, right?
I need to do something different. I don't know what's going on in my brain. Too much wisdom up in there. Last question here is we just kind of talk about, the future of longevity and where TruDiagnostic fits into this industry. Where do you view TruDiagnostic going in the next 5 to 10 years and its role in this kind of longevity industry that's kind of budding right now?
Yeah, I think for me, it kind of goes back to the same thing we've been talking about, which is, the kit, you all did it. It's a finger prick blood spot card, right? So you should be able to prick your finger, fill out this blood spot card, send in your sample. And then within 2 to 3 weeks after the lab receives it, you should be able to get your hormone levels, your immune cell subsets, your complete blood count, your micronutrient levels, your aging outcomes, literally everything served to you, your disease risk, right, on a silver platter. And then, that's a way I think we'll get it into more of the like general healthcare system you were saying as well, just because it's going to be so easy to use it. It's going to be, like a barrier if you're not using it, and it's going to be super cheap as well. So I see us having, maybe some more specific disease risk scores. I think people are most interested actually in the brain. They're actually interested in the heart. Those are kind of the top two feedback points I get when I speak with a lot of my healthcare providers. So if we can give you a test, you prick your finger, we tell you, you have a 99% chance of getting dementia by age 50 if you don't act now. That's the type of results we really want to deliver. And I don't think we're too far away, but then taking it through like FDA approval and getting payers to, reimburse the cost of the test will help us bring it out to the masses too.
Yeah, no, it's exciting for that regard. And I think the research and development side, which I can maybe more speak on, is kind of that is what's exciting. Another thing that we've been talking about is, do you mind if I nerd out a little bit? Just yeah. So anytime that I talk about this area, I always mention this term central dogma of biology, of molecular biology. Reason why I'm talking about this is because when you start to think about all the trackers that are in your life, you got an Apple Watch that is looking at heart rate, steps. What this is essentially a tracker, but on the molecular side. But it's actually a very convoluted network from your epigenetics all the way to the physical output. What people don't recognize is that there are methods in quantifying every step of the way, going all the way from the molecular to the physical. So from the research and development side, what would be interesting is to this is just one portion. Let's start to kind of amass everything. This idea of multi-omics from the molecular, but then also integrating what, your heart rate, your steps, and seeing how that is concordant or discordant. Not only from a research and development side, but also to improve the product. So that's encompassing more of a holistic perspective of health, human health. And I think in 5 to 10 years, we want to be there. We want to be on that cusp. Obviously, we're not going to do it all alone, but I think we cornered the epigenetic side, and I think that we can improve and bolster the epigenetics with additional value coming from different aspects. And then also just making it a lot easier to understand. That 99% of the disease risk. I think the natural question that really comes is, so what do I do now? And I think from a research and development side, that's where I think the scientists really have to come into play and be like, look, we got to test out these interventions, because even if it's from a population level, that is a general trend that maybe then you can start recommending as a first pass.
Yeah, to me, when you describe that in the way that you're describing it, it makes me think of taking something that's typically so opaque. Is like it's so disconnected from, like, you live a certain lifestyle, and then it takes sometimes years before you see any sort of outcomes that are negative from that lifestyle, whether it's diet or exercise or whatever the case may be. But if you're able to clearly kind of track those things from the molecular side of it all the way down until it like physically manifests in your life, in your biological age, I think that's just a way to add much more transparency to it and make it much more real for people and much more urgent, add that kind of sense of urgency to it.
And I think this is something that, I mean, we've talked about too, right? Like we'll have, you talk to patients that have clinical outputs that are not always matching up with the epigenetic versions of that. I mean, I think each of those steps are really important, but then the question is, which one do you believe, right?
I think it's hard because the brain example, even though people are most interested in it, it's like, oh, you have an increased risk for dementia and Alzheimer's. Like, what are you going to do? So I think, there's a lot of work there on 100%. Interventional treatment plans.
Yeah.
I make it less scary.
I'm just going to hope they develop a cure by the time I'm 55 and have a risk of it. Gosh, it's been awesome talking to you guys. I find this stuff super interesting, and you guys are a lot of fun to talk to about it because you're so knowledgeable on it. So thanks for taking the time to come on and record with us. For anybody listening that would like to work with TruDiagnostic and get a test, give them some information on where they can go online, social channels to follow, any of that sort of stuff.
Sure. You can just go to TruDiagnostic.com. It's TRU, and then diagnostic is singular. And my inbox is always open. It's just Hannah@TruDiagnostic.com if anyone wants to talk.
And I'm Varun at TruDiagnostic.com. And then also socials, Instagram. I post all of our papers on Instagram. No thirst traps, just papers.
For all of the science nerds that want to go and nerd out with you, I'm sure they'd love to see all the papers. Awesome, guys. Well, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
Thank you.